Okay. Lesson preparation, chapter 2, SIOP, and that's in this textbook. I have some copies tonight, my impoverished ones. The key here is I like SIOP because it gives you a good, strong background in working on the background of your students, and above all, before that even, lesson preparation. So you know very methodically how you're going to teach the lesson, which gives you great confidence. If you're a new teacher and you're a little nervous, you know what the next step is and the next step. It's not like the old Madeline Hunter teacher lesson that many of you may have heard of. It's from the 50s or something, I don't know. But it wasn't very detailed. And this is very well done because it takes into account the language objectives as well as the content objectives. You may be teaching about the history of the American Civil War, but with language objectives, you're going to be asking students to either talk about some aspect of the Civil War, they're going to write about it, they're going to keep a journal, they're going to write a list of vocabulary words to know, they're going to use language in some content way. It's going to be meaningful. So lesson preparation is the heart and soul, I think, of the SIOP approach. The word SIOP is kind of weird, you know. Sounds like Cyclops. I've never thought it was a very good acronym, but people talk about it. It sounds kind of strange. The SIOP is here. Okay. Now I would like to just hit a couple of things here on the content objectives. You're going to get content objectives if you're teaching an American history class. Even if you're teaching a strictly ESL class, your content objectives will be more focused on the language objectives. If you're teaching spelling or if you're teaching reading, then it'll be just like elementary in some ways. You'll be teaching how to read diphthongs or how to pronounce long and short vowels or something. So language objectives are more dominant if it's purely an ESL lesson. You see an example, page 25, it talks about similes. If you don't know what similes are, they're comparisons with the use of like or as, okay? Like, for instance, using the word like, a summer day is like a Mr. Goodbar candy bar, a giant Mr. Goodbar candy bar, using like and as comparison. In other words, if I say a summer day is a Mr. Goodbar, then what I'm saying is that's a metaphor. Just thought I'd distinguish that. Those are two terms. So that could be what you're going to teach. And it has examples in there. And it says, well, you're going to recognize what they are. You want students to, what are the functions of a simile? And write 3 similes. And that's pretty simple. That's something you could do in 3rd grade, 2nd grade even. Or you could do it in ESL at any age level because it's such a useful thing to know if you're going to read English, talk about English. The key with these objectives is that you want to write nice, clear objectives, and you let the students know this. You write them on the board. Goal of both language and content objectives are written, and students actually are supposed to know these. They're supposed to be able to say, oh, our language objective for today is such and such. So you don't have, it's like the lesson, the goal of the lesson is shared with all the students in the room. You want to make sure all of them understand it. So it's very important because you're teaching language. You want students to know what is it we're teaching today. You know, sometimes if you're in a chemistry class and you don't realize that the teacher is going to teach you about the importance or the effects of sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, if that's not the objective at the beginning, you're going to spend some time thinking, I wonder what the point of this lesson is. Where are we going with this? You don't want mysteries. You want people to know where they're going. It's not like going and like when I go and drive somewhere and I'm looking for a place and I refuse to ask directions or to look on my Google Maps or anything. I'm going to find this place by just circling around and finding it, you know. That's what men do. They get lost. Key vocabulary. So things that you want to look at in developing your language objectives on page 29. What are the words they got to know? What are some language functions they have to know? For instance, if you're telling time, you have to know how to use a clock, and you have to know how to say all those little terms like it's 10 minutes of 2, or people would say it's 10 till 2. You have to decide, am I going to teach all the variations of what time it is when it's 10 till 2? Am I going to say 1:50, 10 of 2, etc.? So that can be confusing. So you might just say, I'm just going to keep with the basics here. What are language, that's language functions, language skills? Are you going to emphasize listening? Is it going to be writing? Are you going to have students writing a short descriptive paragraph with adjectives? Are you going to have, you know, if it's a history class, am I going to have language objectives in there like, please write a paragraph explaining the 3 causes of the Civil War? So you're writing a paragraph, you're not just writing 3 sentences. So it has to be a little more sophisticated in the writing skill. What about grammar or language structures? Is it going to have some tenses in it? Is it going to be past tense? Is it going to be past perfect tense? Like anything complicated, like by the time he reached Gettysburg, Robert E. Lee had lost contact with Stonewall Jackson. Okay, that's a false question because he was dead in May, a month before the Battle of Gettysburg. He had lost Jeb Stuart. He had lost contact with Jeb Stuart. That's right. So as we go through these and talk about these objectives, I want you to go through, and you got to think, you know, grammar, you got to think vocabulary, you got to think, what language lesson tasks are they going to summarize? Are they going to read? Are they going to make a little speech? I mean, sometimes it's oral communication. Are they going to listen to the Gettysburg Address and then try to pick out important points in it? That can be pretty tough. So, you know, it'd be a higher level language skill. What are some learning strategies you're going to use with this? Are students going to be using data and graphs that they read? Are they going to, you're going to read an opinion by 2 different people and then select the one that they prefer? Okay, so you got all these issues. So you have things, and they have an example in 31. What does this sound like to have a content objective? And you got words like, students will identify, students will solve, the students will create a mural depicting the Battle of Gettysburg, you know, Little Round Top and Cemetery Hill and Seminary Ridge and all those places. What about language objectives? Are they going to retell something? Are they going to read and try to persuade someone? Persuasive is a more advanced skill. So what you want to know is these objectives, you'll know when you do them because you can observe them. You can see people have used the language. They've written something you can grade. So your the key with objectives, as you should know, is they can be measured either using a rubric or literally in mathematics that you can grade 5 problems or 10 problems. Supplementary material. This is a big deal. I always see this as, and I mentioned it in my little quote there, it's like marshaling all the materials you'll need. What kind of books do you need? What kind of videos do you need? What kind of manipulatives do you need? If you're teaching geometry and solid geometry, you need pyramids, you need cylinders, you need solid objects, not just 2-dimensional drawings like in 2-dimensional geometry. But if you're going to teach music, you're going to have samples of Mozart or samples of something like that, you know, some type of music or rock and roll. And so students will study it. And then you can get more specific within the context of whatever the topic is. you always want to balance, is it something the students that are with their language skills, are they capable of this? It's not just with ESL students, it's with any student. Do they have the background? Well, they know. You know, if you ask me to talk about measures and notes in a piece of music, I have no background. I couldn't tell you what a measure is. I couldn't tell you what the beat is of a song or something like that. Do you have materials adapted lower level readers? Do you have abridged materials? Do you have do you have vocabulary dictionaries that students can be active in looking up vocabulary? Do you have special devices that you can put on it and will actually pronounce the words when they put it across there? Those are fairly common. We had them 20 years ago. I got some for other departments, other schools, and then they loaned them out to them, never got them back, didn't want to get them back. Okay. What about working with the text? You know, it talks here about, do you highlight text? You don't want to overdo that. Do you tape parts of the reading in your own voice and then make it available online on the computer so students can listen to you read to them? Something to think about. Jigsaw reading or adapted text. Jigsaw reading, if you get groups of people that work together and they try to come up with their own expertise on certain parts of the assignment. Not that you can have all the students be experts on everything, but if, let's say, you had a chapter and every couple of pages a student would be assigned, you need to know what's going on in that chapter and explain it to the group. So you basically take a slice of the block of cheese and you take that off and you're the expert of that little section. Everything from taking notes, getting the book or the material in the language of the students. Fairly easy to get things in Spanish, very hard to get things in Arabic. What about reading books? Are you going to be, is your lesson going to involve other mathematics books, other reading books? Is it, if it's a PE class, do you have a handout? Can you find something on the internet that explains all the positions of baseball players in the field in Spanish? Do you have like the names of all the parts you use if you're going to go golfing? What is a golf club in Arabic? You know, what is a golf club in, you know, what do you call a driver in a golf bag? You know, the driver, the putter. What are those called in whatever language a student has? Maybe they're from Indonesia. And then they get some sample lessons here. You got Mrs. Chin, who's teaching about the gold rush, history class. These are not done on video. They're just in the textbook. So you have to read these, but they're very useful because they also give a grade and they follow through and they talk about how well each one did. Mrs. Chin in here on page 46, she did a great job getting the content objectives over to the students. Language objectives, Mrs. Chin again did a very good job. Mrs. Hargrove didn't talk about the language objectives at all. So she didn't get a very good grade. So when you read this, you can say, oh, this is good, this isn't so good. And then you have a sample of the lesson. This is how you literally mark it up. This is one of the examples I mentioned to you in the back. We have lesson charts, and they go like this. For instance, this is the one I like. I think this is a 2-pager. You can have this front and back, and you can literally put your lesson on this framework. You could put it on a computer on some kind of and then you could type in, you know, this stuff would be in there permanently, but you could type the lessons in that area, or you can handwrite the lessons if you wish. I like to do a nice, neat job because you can then pull these out year after year and print them out. You don't even have to have hard copies. So in this chapter, they talk about all these aspects of lesson preparation, and they give examples of how well these teachers did. I think this is something really useful to read. Don't skip over the lesson examples, okay? So again, SIOP is a very useful and structured approach. You can easily defend it if somebody comes up and challenges this and says, that's not very good.
This is research-based. A lot of things that are nonsense you may get in school that are not research-based. A lot of times different people come up with them. They try to come up with a good idea to do this or do that, and it doesn't work all the time. So anyhow, I just wanted to share that with you. And I'm also going to share this video with my 826 class, because I did this same video last night and something weird happened, or the other night, and I chopped it in half. So I kind of started in the middle of it. And so I now know I cannot interrupt by hitting stop recording and then start recording again, because it only takes half of it. So I'll share this with 826 and replace the other video and with 328. And you guys in 328, you will have chapter 2 available to you tonight. Lucky dogs. Okay, you're in great shape. And we'll have popcorn, I think. Okay. Sorry, 826, but at least I can be charming and chat, right?